The discovery in the forest. The forest was silent that night, only the sound of the wind moving through the tall trees. The moonlight touched the ground in broken silver lines. Between the shadows, a human man named Daniel walked slowly. He often came here after work to clear his mind, but tonight felt different. Tonight, the forest seemed to be holding its breath. As Daniel stepped over dry leaves, he heard something unusual. It was not the call of an animal, not the crack of a branch. It was softer, weaker, almost like a whimper. He stopped and listened. His heart beat faster. The sound came again, faint but desperate. It was the sound of a child crying. Daniel followed the sound, moving carefully. His boots pressed into the earth as he pushed through thick bushes. At first he thought maybe it was a lost human child. But when he stepped closer, he froze. In the small clearing sitting against the trunk of a tree was not a normal child. She was tiny, her skin pale but glowing faintly under the moonlight. Her hair was thin and silver like starlight. Her eyes, large and bright, shined in an unnatural color, deep violet. They looked too big for her face, and in them was fear. She was curled up, hugging her knees, trembling as if the cold would swallow her. Daniel's breath caught in his chest. He had heard stories, rumors told in hushed voices about strange beings seen near the edges of towns, but no one ever believed them. Yet here she was, small, fragile, and clearly not human. The girl's clothes were torn, hardly covering her body. Her tiny feet were dirty and scratched. Her lips were dry. She looked like she had not eaten in days. She raised her head slowly when she noticed Daniel, and her whole body shook harder. She pressed herself against the tree as if trying to disappear. Daniel raised both his hands slowly, showing he meant no harm. "Hey, it's okay," he said softly. His voice echoed gently in the silence. The girl blinked at him, confused. She didn't understand his words, but she recognized the tone. It was not sharp, not cruel. It was gentle. He crouched down, lowering himself to her level. His heart ached at the sight of her, so small, so lost. She looked like she had been thrown away by the world. Daniel reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small packet of bread he had saved. Slowly, he placed it on the ground and pushed it toward her. The girl's violet eyes locked on the bread. Her stomach growled. She hesitated. Then, with shaky hands, she reached out, snatched the bread, and pressed it to her lips. She ate quickly, almost like she feared someone would take it back. Daniel felt a wave of anger at the thought. Who had let a child suffer like this? When she finished, she looked back at him, crumbs on her lips. Her fear was still there, but now mixed with something else. Hope. She whispered something in a language he could not understand. Her voice was weak, broken, but it carried meaning. Daniel didn't know the words, but he knew the feeling. A plea. He slowly extended his hand toward her. "You're safe now," he said gently. His words meant nothing to her ears, but his eyes, his calm movements, spoke louder than language. The girl looked at his hand for a long time. Her small fingers trembled. Then, with all the courage she could gather, she placed her tiny hand in his. The touch was so light, as if she feared she might vanish if she held too tightly. Daniel's chest tightened. This was no wild creature. This was a child in need, alien or not. He carefully lifted her up. She weighed almost nothing. He wrapped his jacket around her thin body, feeling her shivers against his chest. As he carried her back through the forest, the night seemed to grow colder. The trees whispered like old watchers, and Daniel had the strange sense that someone, or something, was aware of his discovery. The girl clung to him, her head against his shoulder. For the first time, her trembling slowed. She trusted him, at least for this moment. When Daniel finally reached the edge of the forest, he stopped. Looking back one last time, the shadows seemed deeper now, darker. It felt like eyes were hidden there, watching him take the girl away. He tightened his hold on her and whispered, "Don't worry, I've got you." But in his heart, he knew this was only the beginning. He didn't know where she came from. He didn't know who might be looking for her. He didn't know what kind of danger he had just invited into his life. Yet as the little alien girl breathed softly in his arms, Daniel understood one thing clearly. He could never abandon her. Whatever storm was coming, he would face it. For tonight, she was his responsibility. And deep in the forest, far beyond the trees, a faint glow moved between the shadows. Something had noticed the girl was gone. Something had started searching. Strange signs around his home. Daniel's small wooden house stood at the edge of the forest, quiet and lonely. The night had passed slowly, and he had hardly slept. The little alien girl was asleep on his couch, wrapped in his blanket. Her tiny chest rose and fell with each breath. She looked peaceful, but Daniel's mind was restless. He He had carried her home only hours ago. His body was tired, but his thoughts were sharp. He knew nothing about her, who she was, where she came from, or what kind of danger followed her. All he knew was that she was no ordinary child, and ordinary children did not simply appear in the woods at night. When the first light of morning touched the windows, Daniel stepped outside. The cold air filled his lungs. He rubbed his eyes and walked toward the forest line. That's when he noticed it, something strange in the dirt. Footprints, not his own, not human. They were long, with 3 sharp ends like claws pressing into the soas. The trail was fresh. The morning dew had not yet covered them. Daniel knelt down, touching the marks. His heart tightened. Whoever or whatever made these prints had come very close to his house during the night. He looked back toward the door. A sudden fear rose inside him. The girl had been sleeping peacefully inside. But what if those things had been watching? What if they had followed her scent right to his home? Daniel stood quickly, his eyes scanning the trees. The forest was quiet, but too quiet. Not a single bird sang, not a single branch moved in the wind. It was as if the whole place was holding back a secret. He walked around the side of his house and his stomach dropped. On the wooden wall near the window there were deep scratches, 3 lines carved into the wood like knives. He touched them with his fingers. The cuts were clean and sharp. Whoever did this wanted him to see. The message was clear. "We know she is here." Daniel hurried back inside, locking the door behind him. He leaned against it for a moment, trying to calm himself. His hands were shaking slightly. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't trained for this. He was just an ordinary man. But now he had something to protect, and danger was already circling. The little alien girl stirred on the couch, opening her violet eyes slowly. She blinked at him, then sat up. Her hair was messy, her small hands rubbing her face. She looked innocent, but Daniel could not forget the scratches outside. Someone wanted her back, and they would not stop. He crouched beside her, trying to smile. "Morning," he whispered. She tilted her head, not understanding. He pointed to himself. "Daniel." Then he gently pointed to her. She hesitated, then whispered something soft, a name that sounded like Lyra. Her voice was weak, but Daniel nodded, repeating it carefully. "Lyra." Her eyes lit up for a second. She nodded shyly. He had a name now. She was not just an alien child. She was Lyra. Daniel made her some warm soup from what little food he had. She ate slowly, her hands still shaking. Every time she heard a creak or a noise outside, she flinched. Daniel noticed it. Her fear was not of hunger or cold anymore. Her fear was of being found. Later that afternoon, Daniel stepped outside again, keeping Lyra inside the locked house. He checked the edges of his land carefully. More signs appeared, broken branches at shoulder height, as if something tall had moved through. Small patches of strange glowing dust on the ground that shimmered faintly in the light. The more he looked, the more he realized whoever was searching for Lyra was not far. They had been circling, watching, waiting for the right moment. That night, as darkness returned, Daniel sat by the window, a lantern glowing faintly beside him. Lyra had curled up again under the blanket, fast asleep, her breathing steady, her small hand clutching the edge of his jacket as if afraid he would vanish. Daniel's eyes remained on the forest. He could not shake the feeling of being watched. The trees seemed alive with hidden eyes. The silence pressed on his chest. Hours passed, and then he saw it. Between the trees, a faint blue shimmer, like 2 orbs floating in the dark. They moved slowly, then disappeared. His blood ran cold. He pressed the lantern down, dimming the light. His heart hammered in his chest. Were those eyes, or something else? He couldn't be sure, but he knew one thing. Lyra had not wandered into his forest by chance. She had been escaping something, and that something was close. At midnight, Daniel thought he heard movement on the roof. A faint scratch, then silence. He held his breath, gripping the iron poker from the fireplace as a weapon. Minutes dragged on, but nothing entered. Nothing attacked. Finally, the noise faded away. The forest returned to its heavy silence, but Daniel knew this was only a warning. Whoever was out there wanted him to feel it, wanted him to know they could come closer any time. When morning came, he checked again outside. On his door, carved with 3 deep marks, was a new message, not written in words, but in signs, a hunter's claim. Daniel stared at it, his jaw tight. He understood. They were telling him this house was no longer his, this ground was no longer safe. They were coming back. He stepped inside quickly. Lyra looked at him with wide violet eyes, as if she already knew. She whispered something in her strange tongue, clutching his arm. Though he couldn't understand the words, he understood the meaning. "They are here." And Daniel realized with a cold shiver, his quiet life was over. The moment he found her, everything changed. Now he wasn't just a man living alone in a forest. He was a guardian of something others wanted back, something they would kill to reclaim, and the signs around his home were only the beginning. The bond grows. The next day began with a heavy silence. Daniel sat at the table with a cup of black coffee, but his eyes were not on the drink. They were on the small figure sitting across from him, Lyra, the little alien girl. Her violet eyes looked curious, yet guarded. Her small hands rested on the wooden table, fingers tapping nervously. She had eaten bread and soup again, slower this time, no longer rushing like a starving animal. Daniel noticed how carefully she chewed, how her eyes lifted toward him every few moments, as if to check if he was still there, still watching, still protecting. "Better?" Daniel asked gently. Of course, she did not understand the words, but she tilted her head, then gave the smallest nod. The gesture made Daniel's chest warm. It was the first time she had responded without fear. The morning hours passed slowly. Daniel kept himself busy with small chores, chopping wood, fixing a loose hinge, preparing food. Lyra followed him with her eyes. She moved cautiously around the house, touching things as if she had never seen them before. The lamp fascinated her. The kettle made her jump, and the sound of running water from the tap made her stare with wide eyes. Daniel realized she must have lived far from anything human, far from warmth and comfort. Her world before him must have been harsh, cruel, filled with hunger and fear. That thought tightened his fists. Whoever had let a child suffer like this did not deserve her back. By the afternoon, Daniel decided to try something. He found an old notebook and pencil from a drawer and placed it in front of her. "Here," he said, pointing at the paper. He drew a simple circle, then a square, then tapped the pencil. Lyra watched closely, her eyes curious. She took the pencil with small, shaky hands. For a moment, she only stared at it. Then slowly, she copied the circle. Not perfect, but clear enough. Daniel smiled. "Good," he whispered. His encouragement made her lips twitch slightly. Not quite a smile, but close. She continued, drawing clumsy shapes, then lines, then what looked like stars. Daniel realized she was showing him something. She tapped her picture of stars, then pointed at herself. Her violet eyes glowed with meaning. Daniel leaned closer, his heart beat faster. "Stars," he whispered. She came from the stars. She was not just an alien girl lost in the forest. She had fallen from far, far away. As evening settled, Daniel lit the lanterns. Lyra stayed near him, no longer hiding in corners. She even touched his arm once, pulling lightly at his sleeve as if to test if he was real. Daniel looked at her, and this time she did smile. Small, uncertain, but true. The bond was forming, slowly, quietly, in the safety of his wooden house. She trusted him, and Daniel felt the weight of that trust. It was heavy, it was dangerous, but it was also something he could not turn away from. Later that night, as he sat by the fireplace, Lyra sat beside him wrapped in the same blanket. Her head leaned lightly against his shoulder. The firelight danced in her violet eyes. For the first time, Daniel felt her breathing calm. No tremors, no sobs, just peace. But peace did not last long. A sound came from outside, the faint crack of a branch. Daniel's whole body stiffened. He reached for the iron poker again, his ears sharp. Lyra froze, her small hand gripping his sleeve tightly. Her eyes wide, full of fear again. She whispered something in her strange language, the word broken, but urgent. Daniel moved slowly to the window, peeking through the curtain. At first, nothing, only the trees swaying in the wind. Then, there, near the edge of the forest, a shadow, tall, unmoving, watching. His chest tightened. Someone was out there, waiting, watching his house. His first instinct was to grab Lyra and run, but run where? They would follow. They already knew. He closed the curtain slowly and turned back to her. She was trembling, hiding her face in the blanket. Daniel knelt in front of her, gently pulling the blanket down. "It's okay," he said softly, though his heart didn't believe it. She looked at him with eyes full of terror, then pressed her forehead to his chest. Daniel's arms wrapped around her without thought. He held her tightly, feeling her tiny body shiver against him. "I won't let them take you," he whispered. She couldn't understand the words, but she understood the warmth. She clung to him, her hands tight on his shirt. And in that moment, Daniel realized something frightening. This child had no one else, no family, no protectors, only him. The bond had grown stronger than he expected. She trusted him with her life, and he, a man who had once thought he was alone in the world, now found himself bound to her fate. That night, when she finally fell asleep beside him on the couch, Daniel stayed awake, staring at the door. His mind raced. Who were the Watchers? What did they want? Would they come in peace or in fury? He didn't have answers, but he knew this. Lyra had chosen him. She stayed. Close to him, she trusted only him, and for that reason, he would fight to the end. Outside, the forest whispered again. The unseen figures moved silently, closer than before, their eyes glowing faintly between the trees. They were patient hunters, waiting for the right time. And inside the small wooden house, Daniel tightened his hold on the sleeping girl, his heart heavy with dread and fire both. The bond was not just growing, it was becoming unbreakable. The door knock at midnight. The night was colder than usual. A heavy wind pushed against the walls of the wooden house, making the windows rattle. Daniel sat near the fireplace, the iron poker resting beside him. His eyes were fixed on the flames, but his ears were listening to every sound outside. Lyra was curled up under a blanket on the couch. Her small breaths were soft, steady, but Daniel noticed how she sometimes twitched in her sleep, nightmares never fully leaving her. He reached out and adjusted the blanket around her tiny shoulders, whispering, "You're safe." Though his own chest felt heavy with doubt, the memory of the shadow in the forest stayed sharp in his mind. Someone was out there, watching. They had left scratches on his walls, left tracks in the dirt, and last night he had seen glowing eyes between the trees. Every sign pointed to one truth. Danger was circling. Midnight came slowly. The house seemed to sink deeper into silence. Even the wind outside grew still. Daniel's eyes grew heavy, but he forced himself awake. He could not afford to sleep, not with Lyra here, not with hunters so close. Then it happened. A sound. 3 loud knocks on the wooden door. The sudden noise cut through the silence like a blade. Daniel's body froze. His heart pounded in his ears. He turned sharply toward the door, his hand already reaching for the poker. Lyra stirred on the couch, her violet eyes snapping open. She sat up quickly, her small hands gripping the blanket. Fear lit up her face before she even heard a second set of knocks. This time the knocks were slower, heavier, deliberate. Whoever was outside wanted to be heard. Daniel rose to his feet carefully, his weapon tight in his hand. He moved toward the door without making a sound, his bare feet pressed against the cold wooden floor. When he reached the door, he pressed his ear against it. For a moment, nothing, only the stillness of the forest. Then, a voice, low and firm, speaking words he could not understand. The language was alien, sharp and smooth at the same time. Lyra gasped. Her face went pale. She rushed to Daniel, grabbing his arm, shaking her head violently. "No," she whispered in broken human sound. Her first human word he truly understood. Daniel looked down at her, then back at the door. The voice outside repeated itself, louder this time, more commanding. Whoever it was, they were not asking, they were demanding. Daniel's hands trembled slightly, but he tightened his grip on the poker. He called out, "Who's there?" His voice was steady, though his chest was tight. The answer came, but again in the alien tongue, sharper now, impatient. Suddenly another sound followed, one more knock, but this was not with a hand. It was the heavy thud of something hitting the door, testing its strength. Lyra yelped softly and hid behind Daniel, clutching the back of his shirt. Daniel's mind raced. Should he open the door? Should he fight? Should he try to escape with her? His house was small, fragile against whatever force stood outside. If they wanted in, wood and nails would not stop them for long. The silence stretched. Then, as if the night itself was holding its breath, the knocking stopped. Daniel stood frozen for what felt like minutes, his eyes locked on the door, his ears straining. Outside, nothing. No footsteps, no voices, no movement, just silence. Slowly he stepped back. His breath came shaky now. The poker was still in his hand, but his palms were sweating. Lyra tugged his sleeve, whispering again in her broken voice, "No, them." Her violet eyes shined with tears. She knew who they were. She feared them more than hunger, more than cold. Daniel crouched down and cupped her face gently. "I won't let them take you," he said softly. She could not understand all the words, but his tone reached her. She pressed her forehead against his, trembling. For the first time, she whispered his name. Neil. The way she shaped it was rough, but clear. Hearing his own name from her lips filled him with fire. It wasn't just about protecting a stranger anymore. This was a bond, a promise. The rest of the night passed slowly. Daniel stayed awake, sitting with Lyra close to him, his eyes never leaving the door. Every creak in the wood made him tense. Every gust of wind felt like footsteps, but no one came again. When the gray light of dawn touched the windows, Daniel finally stood and unlocked the door slowly. He opened it just enough to look outside. His blood ran cold at what he saw. On the ground before his house, pressed into the dirt, were 2 sets of tracks. long, clawed footprints, larger than the ones he had seen before. Beside them lay something else, a small piece of cloth, dark and strange, with a pattern of glowing lines running across it. It looked like part of a uniform, alien, dangerous. Daniel bent down and picked it up. The fabric hummed faintly in his hand. He could feel power inside it. He looked back at the footprints, then at the deep scratches on the door that had not been there the night before. They had been here, close enough to touch the wood of his house, close enough to hear his breathing, and they had left behind a message without words. "We are coming back." Daniel closed the door slowly, locking it tight again. He turned toward Lara, who stood trembling near the fireplace, watching him with wide, fearful eyes. He walked to her, placed the cloth on the table, and whispered, "Who are they?" She shook her head quickly, her small hands covering her ears, refusing to speak. Her whole body shivered. Daniel's stomach twisted. Whoever those beings were, Lyra would rather stay silent than name them. And Daniel knew one thing clearly. Last night was only a warning. The real test had not even begun. The women's claim. The sun dipped low, painting the forest in shades of red and gold. Daniel stood outside his small house, his eyes fixed on the tree line. He had not told Lyra, but he knew. They would return. The knocking at midnight had not been the end. It had only been the beginning. Lyra stayed inside, sitting close to the fireplace, her violet eyes filled with worry. She kept glancing at the door as if she could sense what Daniel already knew. The hunters were close, and this time they would not just knock. As the last light of day faded, the silence of the forest grew heavier. Then, without warning, it happened. A loud knock, sharp and powerful, shook the wooden door. Daniel froze, his chest tight. His hand reached for the iron poker again, but before he could move, the door swung open. Not broken, not forced, just opened. As if whoever stood outside had the right to enter, two tall figures stepped into the house. The air seemed to shift with their presence. The firelight flickered wildly as their shadows stretched across the floor. They were women, but not human. Their skin was pale with a faint glow, like moonlight trapped in flesh. Their hair long, silver, flowing behind them like liquid metal. And their eyes, sharp, bright, the same violet as Lyra's but colder, filled with authority. Lyra gasped, scrambling backward until she pressed against the wall, her small hands shaking as she whispered something in her alien tongue. Her voice cracked with fear. The taller woman's gaze followed her, lips curling into something between a smile and a sneer. She spoke in that same strange language Daniel had heard at the door last night. Her words rolled like thunder. Daniel stepped forward, planting himself between the child and the women. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice steady, though his hands tightened around the poker. The second woman tilted her head, her sharp eyes narrowing. Then she spoke in broken human tongue, slow but clear. "She is ours." Daniel's jaw tightened. He looked back at Lyra, who shook her head violently, whispering, "No, no," over and over again. He turned back to the women, his voice firm. "She doesn't want to go with you." The taller woman took a step forward, her presence heavy. Her silver hair shimmered in the firelight. "Child belongs," she said coldly, her voice thick with accent but strong with authority. "Not yours, never yours." Daniel's chest burned with anger. "She's not a thing you can claim," he snapped, his hand pointed at Lyra. "She's a child, she's scared, and she doesn't want you." The second woman's eyes flashed dangerously. Her voice was low, almost a growl. "You, human, weak. You keep what is not yours." She raised her hand, and for a moment the air shimmered, a faint blue glow forming around her fingers. Lyra cried out in terror, clutching the blanket around her. Her whole body shook. Her eyes begged Daniel not to let them take her. Daniel stepped closer, blocking the women with his own body. His voice was quiet but sharp as steel. "If you want her, you'll have to go through me." The taller woman paused, her glowing hand fading. She studied him carefully, tilting her head as though measuring his worth. Then she spoke again in their language, her tone sharp, commanding. The second woman answered, their voices quick back and forth, like predators debating what to do with prey that dared to bare its teeth. Finally, the taller woman turned her violet eyes back on Daniel. "You cannot protect her." And she said slowly, each word heavy, "She carries blood of stars. It is forbidden for her to stay with you." Daniel didn't move. His breath was heavy, his grip on the poker tight. "Then let her choose," he said, his voice steady. "If she wants to go with you, she can, but if she wants to stay, she stays." The two women exchanged looks, their cold expressions cracked with a flicker of surprise, as if no human had ever spoken to them like this before, as if no one had dared. Lyra's voice broke the silence, weak but clear. She clutched Daniel's shirt, her small body trembling. Then, in broken human words, she whispered, "Stay with Daniel." The taller woman's eyes widened for a moment, her expression hardening again quickly. The second woman hissed in anger, her voice sharp as she barked something in their alien tongue. The taller woman raised her hand, silencing her companion. Her violet eyes burned into Daniel's, cold and unreadable. Then she spoke slowly, her words heavy like stone. "You do not understand what you keep." Without another word, she turned, her silver hair flashing in the firelight. The second woman glared at Daniel before following. The door slammed shut behind them, shaking the entire house. Daniel's chest rose and fell in heavy breaths, his knuckles white around the poker. He turned to Lyra, who was sobbing into his shirt, her small hands clutching him as though he were her last anchor. He held her tightly, whispering, "I've got you. I won't let them take you." But his mind was racing. Their words echoed inside him. "She carries blood of stars. Forbidden. You do not understand what you keep." The claim was clear. The women would return. They believed Lyra belonged to them, and Daniel knew, after tonight, that they would not stop until they had her back. And yet, as he held the trembling child in his arms, one truth burned brighter than fear. She had chosen him, and he would not let her go. The clash of wills. The house was quiet again, but it was not peace. The air still carried the weight of what had just happened. The two alien women had left, yet their presence clung to the walls like smoke after a fire. Daniel sat near the fireplace. Lyra pressed tightly against his side. Her small body trembled, her violet eyes wide with fear. She had spoken. She had chosen him. But that choice had not ended the danger. It had only made things worse. He replayed the women's words in his mind. "She carries blood of stars. Forbidden. You do not understand what you keep." They weren't simple hunters. They weren't just strangers. They were something higher, something with authority, and they were not going to give up. Daniel tightened his arm around Lyra. "I won't let them take you," he whispered. His voice was soft, but his chest burned with fire. She looked up at him, whispering his name again. "Neil." The broken sound of it both warmed him and tore at him. She trusted him completely, and that trust was a heavy burden. Hours passed. The night grew deeper. Daniel did not sleep. He sat alert, waiting. Every small creak of the wood made his hand tighten on the iron poker. Lyra stayed awake too, her head leaning against his chest, as though afraid he might disappear if she closed her eyes. Then, sometime past midnight, the door shook violently. A thunderous force slammed against it. Daniel jumped to his feet, pulling Lyra behind him. His heart hammered as the door rattled again, this time harder. Cracks spread across the wood. A voice shouted from outside, harsh, commanding, alien words burning through the night. Lyra cried out, clutching his shirt. Daniel couldn't understand the words, but he understood the tone, demand, anger, ownership. "Enough," Daniel shouted back, his voice shaking the air. "She's not yours." The next moment, the door burst open, splinters flying. Eyeing across the room, the two women stepped in again, this time not calm, not measured, but furious. Their violet eyes blazed like fire, their silver hair whipped around them as if touched by unseen wind. The taller one raised her hand, a wave of blue energy forming in her palm. It glowed so brightly the shadows in the room fled. Lyra screamed. Daniel stepped forward, the poker raised, his chest tightened. He knew he was no match for them. He was human, ordinary, but he would not step aside. "Stop," he shouted. His voice was raw. "If you hurt me, fine, but you're not taking her." The shorter woman snarled, her words sharp. "She is ours. Her blood is not for you." Daniel's jaw clenched, his eyes burned with fury. "Then why is she terrified of you?" he snapped. His words cut through the air, and for a brief second the taller woman hesitated. Lyra pressed herself against his back, whispering something broken in her own tongue. Daniel couldn't understand, but the pain in her voice was clear. She begged him not to let them take her. The taller woman lowered her hand slightly, her glowing energy flickering. Her violet eyes studied Daniel with strange intensity. She spoke slowly, as if testing each word in human tongue. "You protect her, even if it means your death?" Daniel raised his chin. His heart pounded, but his voice was steady. "Yes." Silence fell. The fire crackled in the hearth. The shorter woman hissed, her fury boiling, but the taller one lifted her hand, silencing her. For the first time, her cold face showed something different. Uncertainty. Lyra peeked around Daniel, her small voice breaking the silence. "Stay with Daniel." She repeated the words, stronger this time, her eyes wet with tears but glowing with determination. The taller woman's eyes narrowed. She looked between the child and the human, her lips pressed into a hard line. Her choice is dangerous, she said, her tone sharp. You do not know what you carry. Daniel stepped forward, closing the space between them. His voice was quiet but full of steel. Then explain it to me. Don't threaten her. Don't treat her like property. Tell me why she's so important, because until I understand, I'm not letting her go. The shorter woman growled, fury shaking her shoulders, but the taller woman raised her hand again, stopping her. Her violet eyes locked on Daniel's, cold fire burning in them. For a long moment, no one moved. Then she lowered her hand, the glow around her fingers vanishing. She turned to her companion and spoke in their alien tongue, low and fast. The other woman's face twisted with rage, but she obeyed, stepping back. The taller woman looked back at Daniel one last time. This is not finished, she said coldly. Her words carried weight, not as a threat but as a promise. Then both women turned and left, the door slamming behind them. The silence that followed was crushing. Daniel's chest rose and fell in heavy breaths. His body shook, not from weakness, but from the fire that burned inside him. He turned and knelt before Lyra. She was crying, her small hands reaching for him. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. It's okay, he whispered, though he knew it wasn't. I'm here. They won't take you. Her small voice muffled against his shirt. Kneel. Stay. His arms tightened around her. He closed his eyes. His mind was a storm. The clash tonight had shown him one truth. These women were powerful, more powerful than anything he had ever faced, but for some reason they had hesitated. For some reason, his words had struck them, and he knew this was not just about a child anymore. This was about something far greater, something tied to the stars themselves. The clash of wills was only the first battle. The real war was still coming, the final choice. The dawn was gray, heavy clouds hiding the sun. Daniel stood at the window, staring into the endless forest. His body ached from the sleepless night. His mind heavy with the clash that had shaken his home. He could still see their violet eyes, still feel the pressure of their presence. Their words echoed inside him. You do not know what you keep. Behind him, Lyra slept on the couch, curled under the blanket. Her small hand still clutched his shirt from where she had fallen asleep. Even in rest, her face was tense, her body ready to flinch at any sound. She had chosen him, whispered his name with trembling lips. And for that choice, they would come again. Daniel knew it. He could almost feel it in the air, like the forest itself was waiting for another storm. By mid-morning, the waiting ended. It began with silence, too deep, too unnatural. The birds stopped singing, the wind stopped moving. Even the crackle of the fire seemed to fade. Then came the footsteps, not soft this time, but heavy, deliberate, surrounding the house from every side. Daniel's chest tightened. He grabbed the poker again, standing in front of Lyra. Her violet eyes snapped open as if she had sensed them too. She sat up quickly, clutching the blanket. Her lips moved in broken words. They come. The door shook once, then opened slowly. The taller alien woman stepped inside, the shorter one behind her. But they were not alone. Two more figures waited outside, their sharp outlines barely visible through the gray light. This time, their presence was heavier, more final. They had come to end it, Lyra whimpered, pressing against Daniel's back. He raised the poker higher, but his voice was steady. She stays. The taller woman's eyes burned. She spoke in her sharp, broken human tongue. You, human, cannot fight forever. She is starborn. She belongs to us. Daniel's grip tightened, his jaw clenched. No, he said firmly. She belongs to herself, and she chose me. The shorter woman snarled, her silver hair flicking in anger, her voice cracked through the air. She does not choose. She carries blood that binds her. But before Daniel could answer, Lyra's small voice broke the air. Stronger than before, trembling, but clear. I choose Daniel. Her tiny body shook, but her violet eyes blazed with fire. Stay with Daniel. The room froze. The taller woman stared at her, her expression unreadable. The shorter one hissed in fury. She is a child. She cannot choose. But Lyra stood, her small bare feet pressing into the wooden floor. She moved from behind Daniel and clutched his arm. Her voice broke but did not stop. I choose. Human. I choose. Him. The taller woman's face hardened. The weight of her stare pressed against Daniel's chest like a storm. But he stood firm, his arm around the girl. You heard her, he said, his voice low but sharp as steel. She has chosen, and I will die before I let you take her." For a long moment, no one moved. The air was heavy, the fire flickered. The shorter woman raised her hand, blue energy sparking violently around her fingers. Daniel's muscles tensed. He was ready to fight, even if it meant his end. Then, the taller woman spoke, her voice sharp but quieter than before. "She has chosen." Her words carried weight, as if she had just sealed something. The shorter woman whipped her head toward her in disbelief. "You cannot allow this," she hissed, but the taller one silenced her with a single glance. Her violet eyes returned to Daniel, cold, heavy, but no longer blazing with the same fire. "You have taken responsibility," she said, her voice like stone. "You will suffer it, human." Daniel's chest rose and fell, his arms tightened around Lyra. "Then so be it." The taller woman stepped back, her silver hair glinting in the gray light. She spoke one last time, each word sharp as a blade. "She carries blood that will change you, blood that will mark you. Remember this, human. When the stars call her, you will not stop it." Then, without another word, she turned and left. The shorter woman lingered for a hear. Beat longer, her fury like fire, but she followed. The door slammed shut. The footsteps faded back into the forest. The silence that followed was thick. Daniel's arms trembled as he lowered the poker. He dropped it to the floor and sank to his knees, pulling Lyra into his chest. Her small arms wrapped tightly around his neck, her tears wetting his shirt. "It's over," he whispered, though he knew deep down it wasn't. "They're gone." She pressed her face into him, whispering in broken sound, "Daniel, safe. With you." His heart ached. He kissed the top of her silver hair and closed his eyes. For the first time in his life, he was no longer just a man living in a quiet house by the forest. He was protector, guardian, father, and more, bound not by blood but by choice. The final choice had been made, not by him, but by her. And because of that choice, their lives would never be the same. Outside, the forest slowly returned to life. The wind moved again, birds began to sing. Yet somewhere far beyond the trees, far above the clouds, in the endless stretch of space, something stirred, waiting. The alien women had left, but their warning remained. Lyra carried blood that could change everything. And now, Daniel carried the weight of protecting her. Whatever came next, he was ready. Because when the little alien girl chose him, she gave him more than a burden. She gave him purpose, and Daniel would never let her down.